Welcome to today's Fireside Chat with Jesse. I am joined today by the lovely Lovern Garden. Thank you, Lovern, for joining me again.
Thank you for having me, Jesse. I appreciate you.
No, I appreciate you, friend. And, we're taking a little different approach to today's Fireside Chat as we are going to talk equipment finance cares.
Yeah.
And more importantly, what is equipment finance cares? Like, how did it come to be? And then kind of where are we going from here with this initiative?
Yeah. And I'm so happy we're sort of addressing that, because even though it's been around now for more than a few months, many folks are still asking, what is it? And how do I get involved? You see the pictures, they see some video clips, and I'm glad that we're sort of putting sort of a face to what it is, and I'm having this discussion around it.
Nope, absolutely. And I'm still getting those too, even though we've had a couple events now. I think we kicked our first press release off in April.
Yes.
Then we had the event in June and then an event in August. And we just confirmed our third event today, which will be Wednesday, November 17th. Regent's Capital, Don Hanson, Dennis Odeon. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, guys.
Be hosting us. So that's fantastic. And then there's going to be a NIFA event that following day. So if people want to come in, they can hit both events. And more importantly, come and hear, from a great lineup of panelists that we'll select and foundations in the area.
Yeah. And so, Jesse, do you want to just touch a little bit on about, how we as a, team came about?
Sure. So, this
part
was
of the team.
Yeah, sure. So this was an initiative that you and I, formulated, and I guess we'll take a couple steps back there. So Brooke Eisenhart, my wife, started a publishing company a little over a year ago. And as we were kind of exploring potential authors, I've known you, I think, since I got in the industry in 2005.
Yes.
Knew your story and reached out, and I think the stars aligned based on timing of everything with you.
Absolutely. And I think at that point, it just made sense to join Brooke's publishing company as an author. And I signed on there. But then, once the book was released,
what would you take?
This is
the joy of
Zooming. You know what? 2 years ago, I would have felt terrible, but in COVID world, this is fantastic. And no, I won't edit it. But hey, Rory, if you'd like to say hi to Lovern, you can say hi, Lovern.
Rory.
She wasn't feeling that well this morning, so she stayed home.
Oh,
okay.
Well, you look super special.
I'll be right there and get you some donuts. Okay.
I love it.
Donuts, cracker. What I just promised? I just promised her donuts. We don't have donuts in this house. I'll get you something nice. Okay. Thank you, honey. Great. Just lied to my kid over a Zoom.
Fantastic. I love it.
Yeah, just some donuts. What's the thing? Like, really? Anyhow, let's circle back. Never a dull moment, Lovern. Never, ever. So let's talk about the book project.
Yeah, and so it made sense to join Paperclip as an author at that point. As you said, the stars aligned. I'd been thinking about it as of last year, and when you and Brooke presented the opportunity, it just all made sense. And so, the opportunity to write the book was awesome, but then how did we then further carry the message of the book? And not just the book, but the work that we're doing through Love Life Now Foundation, which is the foundation that I run full-time. And it's, centers around the issue of domestic violence awareness. And so the book, which I consider a love project, was to me an extension of the work that we did. And I just loved the fact that Paperclip was willing to sort of extend or amplify the voice of it through not just the book, but coming up, or us sort of curating what is now Equipment Finance Cares, which essentially puts a spotlight on thought leadership and some of the things that aren't necessarily discussed in the leasing and finance industry. And so hosting panels where folks are able to share their views on their how-tos and things that have worked for them to date, as it relates to employees and themselves and the workforce, and all of those things that aren't necessarily, as I mentioned, discussed on a day-to-day basis when it comes to companies in this industry. But then also, how would we be able to sort of shine a light on the foundations and the causes, right? Not necessarily run by someone in the industry, but one that someone in the industry cared about. And so, sort of marrying those two and merging those two things together are what are the base components of what Equipment Finance Cares centers around.
Yeah, no, and it was as we were kind of working on this project, and it's like, okay, well, how do we get your story out to the masses? I mean, you've been in the industry for 20 years, 22 years. I'm not dating you or anything.
Yeah.
But
No, you're getting it right.
I got 16, you got 22, but whatever, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
How do you send the message there? And I know we were kind of spitballing some different things, and as we were talking about it, and then obviously doing firesides like this with different thought leaders, understanding kind of where their mindset's at, and then knowing over the years what other foundations people give back to. It's kind of just like, obviously we're centering around, this story that you have, because the story of domestic violence, the stats are just extremely concerning
and alarming. Yeah. And so furthering that message definitely has been one of the hallmarks of Equipment Finance Cares events to date. As you mentioned, we've hit Minnesota, we've done, no pun intended there, right? When I say where we've been, but we've gone to Minnesota, we've gone to most recently New York, and in doing the events there, and no matter where we've been, no matter what city we're in, essentially every single time after I've done a very mini presentation of an awareness talk, there's no shortage of folks that come up to me afterwards and say either me too, that they have either experienced this issue or know someone that has experienced it, or that they never knew anything about this issue. And, when you talk about the stats that how alarming they are, they never had a clue until we had this event. And so they're so thankful for the most part for the information being shared. And right, so the more you know, the better you do. And part of the call to action when I do these mini talks and the book signings post is to how do you then become part of the solution? It doesn't take a whole lot. It doesn't take billions of dollars to curate change right from where you're at. And that's the encouragement, I think, not just with Love Life Now and the spotlight around my book and the story through that paperclip was able to allow me to the presence to do, but how are other people in the industry able to support causes and things that other people care about within this space? And I think that's so super important. One of the things that sticks out to me is that, for all the folks that we've had share about some of the causes that they care about to date, more than half of them I was not aware of, right? And so being in the know about the Special Olympics and what it really entails when Bob Cohen was able to sort of spotlight that, and in the New York, at the New York event, hearing from other folks about, the men and boys that they're teaching etiquette to, and, bringing them up in a way that, or helping them to realize that they're not alone despite the circumstances that they're facing. There's so many things that I have learned about and causes that I've become aware about that I was not privy to before. And to know that people in our space are advocating for those type of things it's phenomenal. And I am so humbled by, having the, again, the opportunity to provide a space like this, because a lot of what we continue to hear as well as these events continue to happen is that folks are saying, wow, it feels so good. And it's so fantastic that I'm able to be vulnerable, that I'm able to share. about things that I wouldn't necessarily talk about in another panel or be open to be talking about, but here they are, and they're being able to do that. And so those are some of the most rewarding things for me that have come about since Equipment Finance Cares has started.
No, and I get a little bit of the goosebumps when we sit there and we talk about some of these foundations. I mean, you touched on a couple of them there. Slipka the Slipka Foundation was that last one. These aren't things that you're naturally going to know about people because, like you said, people want to open up. You're not having these conversations, and
right.
And I think as an industry, we have that stigma where it's just, oh, you just care about money. You don't care about anything
the bottom
else.
line.
And over the years, I've learned, okay, well, this they also do this, or they also do that. Or when you're in the lobby going on a sales call, you look at the wall and it's like, wow, this company gives that much money to United Way, or these different things. And I actually started a spreadsheet by state in regards to, okay, here's the equipment finance company, here's the causes that they support, here's the person, because as we go state by state, we want to make sure that we're spotlighting these. So, as an industry, people understand that there is a real philanthropic, I always mess up that word, side to equipment finance that people might not be aware of.
Exactly. And it's hugely important because, once again, you're not only spotlighting these causes, but again, marrying and merging the thought leadership panels that happen during these Equipment Finance Cares event are really giving space where people can open up and get permission to talk about everyday things that affect them as an employee, and how, these panels can help, sort of make you take a step back as a leader in this industry, wherever you come from, or as a colleague in the space that you work in, to be able to look at your colleague or your employee from a whole perspective, as opposed to somebody showing up to do the work. And again, for me, that in itself, coupled with the idea that we are very much human and we support things that matter, I think both those things are insanely humbling, to be able to know about someone that you're potentially going to do business with, or someone that you've known in the industry for many years, and then strike a conversation, right? So the idea is that the seed is being planted, that this person supports this is what they care about, and then run with it, right? However you want to run with it. But what we're doing with Equipment Finance Cares is planting the seed, and I'm so incredibly grateful to be part of it.
No, and I appreciate you being on this journey with me here. And I think now is an appropriate time to give a shout out to our advisory council.
Yes.
So obviously we all can't be on here, but you have Nancy Robles from Eastern Funding, Reed Rakovich, CLFP Foundation, Stephanie Hall, Bank Financial, Ricardo Rios, CFI, and then Brittany Weber from Huntington Bank. It truly
all
takes
rock stars.
All stars, and it takes an army to put these things together, and appreciate everyone's time and their support of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talk about the work that goes into these events, it takes all minds coming together from different
Absolutely.
areas of this industry, right? So here you have a Boston Financial and Equity Corporation national sales development person. Then you have someone across the way in Washington, someone across the way, Seattle, you have someone across the way in Philly, right? Someone in, we're all across the country and have sort of a feeler, in different areas of this industry about what we think could be needed. And so far we've been right. And again, it's so excited about where this is going and what it's already done, because it's done a lot. And that is not to toot our own horns. These are things that we're hearing directly from attendees. And I'm so excited about the permission that we're giving to folks to be able to be themselves in these spaces, because that's important.
Yeah, I think you hit on a good point there. It's, when people are showing up, they're asking a lot of questions, and I'm like, just watch how things unfold here, and
Just wait a minute.
you'll kind of see where this track is going. And like you mentioned earlier, it's touching on the human side of things, and we're having conversations that traditionally people don't want to have because they don't feel comfortable. However, I want to say a main word is just empathy, is what a lot of people are kind of seeing in this, where you might not be able to relate to every person that's on a panel or everyone in the room, but now you kind of understand in regards to this is what that person's going through. So then next time when that situation presents itself, think about it this way.
Yeah, and it won't seem so foreign. It won't seem so, I don't want to hear it. It's like you're in a space now, you've heard it. Now what do you do with it, right? So again, planting that seed that people can run with is really really important. What you do with that, that's up to you, right? But being sort of an avenue for change, that may be uncomfortable, right? Because change in any format is uncomfortable. But being an avenue for that is just, again, a really humbling thing to be. And I'm so happy that Equipment Finance Cares exists, and I know a lot of other people are as well.
Yeah, and I like the settings where we're trying to keep it 50 people and under, because then you have that intimate setting. People are opening up. I mean, the first event, I think we had almost like 65, and that was great. But this last one was just, I want to say we had a little over 40, and it was, I don't even know where those 5 hours went. All of a sudden, I'm like, it's 6 o'clock, and I'm like, we still have things to do, people.
Exactly.
Let's go.
Worked. It worked.
Right.
It worked. And I think there was the intimacy of the room allowed, again, for those one-on-one conversations. So you had a thought panel, and then discussion, and a break, and some networking. And then you had another thought panel and some discussion and networking. And then you had this, spotlight on, this particular issue, domestic violence awareness. And so again, then the foundation spotlight, the causes that others care about in the space. And so it just, while it all may not be the same going forward, that's sort of the general scope of what a typical event, an EFC care event looks like. And I'm saying EFC as Equipment Finance Cares, but that right there, it just allows, first of all, people are excited to see people in person, right?
Yeah. I mean the timing of it, that obviously helps, especially when other things are continuing to be postponed. And timing is everything. But
exactly. But in being happy to see people, we're also talking about and addressing those things that have affected the same people that you're talking to, that wouldn't necessarily be addressed at a conference or in a different setting. And people are happy to talk about this stuff because they've been cooped up for a year and nobody to really share it with. And now you have this intimate setting of a room where you're able to just, again, get permission to do so. And not be necessarily chastised for it, and not be afraid to share. So, all of that comes about at these events, and it makes me super, super duper. I keep saying it, excited to be a part of something like that. We're all human, right? At the end of the day, we're coming to work and events, industry events, with our whole selves. But are we able to present our whole selves all the time? No. And oftentimes it's very pressurized in those settings. It's about the bottom line. It's about getting the deal. It's about making the connection, and then that's it. You don't know that person, and you say over the years, "Oh, that's my friend." Oh, do you really know your friend? Do you really want to know that person, that you're potentially going to do business with, about, what they care about? And anyway, so I'll get off my soapbox.
No. I mean, I wanted to take a couple minutes. I mean, so of the two events, we have 27 total sponsors for both events, which was amazing. 120 people total.
Mhm.
From the first event, I want to say it was 25 organizations. And what's interesting is the second one, while we only had 43, which was perfect because we wanted to keep it under 45, the first event
Yeah.
was 60 from 25 organizations. The second one was 43 from 31 organizations. So,
Wow.
and we're able to raise, I want to say, to date, so far, we've raised $6,000 net that we're able to give back to some of these foundations and charities. And,
Yeah.
there's people coming forward and saying, hey, what can I do to host one of these at my office? How can we
Yes.
do our part? And that's amazing because that keeps costs down, and we're
Yes.
able to raise even more money for these foundations and
To
charities.
be able to give back. Yeah. And
Yeah.
and at the core and at the end of the day, that's where the dollars essentially really help, is being able to give back to organizations that are doing the frontline work, that are, helping people right where they're at. One at the last event, I again, I'll go back to Bob Cohen because that's one of those that stuck out in my mind, but also cookies for uh
Yeah.
for kids with cancer, right? And so we, and all of the amazing causes that were talked about that day, all of them resonate with me. But again, it's one of those things that I would never have known before this, right? You
Yeah.
don't even bring that up in conversation when you're talking to someone. I have been privileged over the years. I'm really, really thankful to have with folks in the industry about the work that the foundation does, because I would be asked, hey, what did you do today when you flew in for the conference? Well, I went and I visited a domestic violence shelter. Huh? And then the conversation goes from there. But anybody else, generally, that's not the norm. And so to have again this space where they're able to share all these things that they care about, it just is endearing, humbling, and puts people more in the know about how and who they do business with. So appreciate
Yeah,
that.
no, I agree 100%. And there's a few people I want to single out based on their individual contributions to some of our events. The
Yes.
first event, Bill Hennick, um, you know, purchased all the books, so everyone at the
Big sponsor. Yeah.
everyone, he was the book sponsor. The second event, Sean Arnone put this on at his
Yes.
country club. You had George Parker,
Oh,
Jacob Cutler. Multiple people have come forward and made individual contributions
yes.
to us, let alone, Great American Insurance has sponsored both the first two events. Sean and his team at Dedicated have sponsored
Dedicated.
both of them as well. I mean, those guys do a great job. And,
Phenomenal.
this California event, I think, I'm gonna cap it at 50, and
Yeah.
it's gonna fill up quickly because I'm gonna try to
Yeah.
bring in some guest speakers from my backyard here in Arizona to come.
I
So
love it. I love
yeah,
it. I love it, to keep that intimacy of that space going. And I think, to all the sponsors credit, um, they believe in the work that the Equipment Finance Cares Initiative is doing. And I'm just so incredibly grateful to each and every one of them. I mean, we don't get that space, we don't get that vulnerability, we don't get the awareness if they don't put their dollars to support this. And so I just want to say to each of you that I appreciate you. I know Jesse appreciates you. I know our entire advisory board appreciates you. And grateful. That's the big word here, grateful. Because at the end of the day, this is benefiting in the long run
yeah,
folks that are on the front line, doing the work to support causes that they really care about, that affect everybody. I mean, each of these causes that we have spotlighted to date are things that we won't necessarily think about on a day-to-day basis, but it affects everyone for the most part. And so I'm excited. I'm excited and grateful, and we appreciate you.
no. I mean, you said it best there. So coming up, obviously we have that event in November. We're targeting dates for next year. We'll be rolling out over the next few months. We are partnering with the Monitor soon on Foundation Fridays. So that will start in the middle of September. So I'm excited to work with Lisa and her team on that, where every Friday we'll be spotlighting, you know, like Love Life Now, we'll do one Friday.
Yeah.
Magic Charities, which is Steve Grosso's
Yes.
charity that Lisa sits on the board. I mean, there's so many of these. That'll be a
So
neat
many.
little
Yeah.
partnership between EFC and Monitor there. And then who knows what
Yeah.
tracks we're going to go with this. I mean, we already are building the base. Do
Right.
we do just a women track for some of these
I love
events? I
it.
mean, there's so many different ways that we can go with this, and with the advisories
Yeah.
council's vision and the support. I mean, like you said, of the sponsors,
Yes. At the
they're like,
core.
Jesse, what are you doing? And I'm like, just trust me. Like, trust me, you'll see and everything. And show them where all their money's going and everything else. And
Yeah.
it's great, the support that we're getting for this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, stick along with us for the ride. Because today it's been a really humbling one and an exciting one. And if you are ever thinking about attending an EFC event, you'll understand what all that means, right? It's one thing for us to talk and schmooze about it here. But I advise you, take a gander at one of them if it's in your area, and come out and see and support the effort to be part of what's going on, to support causes that are near and dear to a lot of us, and really at the end are really intentional about helping things that again, people care about. So very appreciative, very excited about what's to come. The sky's the limit about the way that we can help others, and this is just and the thought leadership that comes from it as well. I don't want to forget that part, because that's a huge part of what's done. But awareness about all of these things and the ways that you can support others are at the core of what EFC is about. And so just come on out. Come on out.
And I also want to give thanks to Chad and Blair at the
Yes.
National
Oh,
Equipment and Finance Association. They, we're partnering with them on several different events, trying to make sure that when people come out, travel to one of their regional events, we'll have something next to them. We'll also
exactly.
have a booth at their conferences. So really grateful for their partnership on this initiative as well.
Thank you very much, Nifa. We appreciate you big time, big time. Thank you, because it just makes it that much easier for folks to be able, again, to get involved. So thank you for leadership on that end.
And, if anyone wants to get involved, or if any organizations want to host a future event, you know where to find me. You know where to find Lovern. So don't hesitate, or anyone at our advisory council. We had a press release 2 weeks ago. I'm working on our website, so bear with me. It's not in my skill set, but we'll get there. I also want to thank Bob Cohen and his firm for helping us get our 501c3 status. Thank you for volunteering that time and dollar amount to help us out there. So thank you.
Huge help, Bob. We appreciate you big time. And to that end, I urge folks to understand that, there are many ways that you can be a part of this. And again, if anything that we said has interested you, reach out, right?
Yeah.
Jesse or I, or anyone on the advisory team that we mentioned, Stephanie, Reed, Ricardo, and Brittany. Did I miss anyone?
I'm not sure, but what I'll do for the first time is I will actually put a slide at the end of this. I'm getting better at iMovie. I'll put a slide at the end with the advisory council and all of our
Perfect.
contact information.
Please.
I'm assuming I can probably figure that out, but yeah, I got it.
You got this, Jesse.
I got it. Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you, Jesse.
All right, Lovern, I really appreciate your time, and appreciate people who are watching today. Reach out like anything else. If you watch these firesides, what I stress about is the more effort you put in, the more you get out of anything. Whether if it's an association, giving back to local charities and foundations, do your part.